Aisha? Hello, everyone. How are you? I hope things are good.
Hi, Aisha. So I think we can begin today. It's such an honor to be here among such resilient, strong women. And I think the topic that we want to discuss is equally important. So I think we're all live, so we can start.
Yes, absolutely.
Good evening to all our viewers. My name is Aisha Siddiq Khan. I am an alumnus of one of the US State Department exchange programs, SUSI 2009. I'm a barrister by profession, and I'm also the chairperson of the Gender and Legal Education Committee of the Islamabad High Court Bar Association. I welcome all my speakers today, and it's an absolute honor to have such powerful women today as our speakers who have stories of exemplary courage and resilience. And our today's webinar is going to be on gender-based violence as part of the 16-day activism against gender-based violence. So I would begin this webinar by introducing my speakers. First of all, I have Barrister Khatija Siddiqui. She's also a survivor of gender-based violence. She was stabbed 21 times in broad daylight, and she got justice after 3 years of legal proceedings and active social media campaign. She is now a human rights activist, and she's doing amazing job. Thank you very much for joining us, Khatija.
Thank you, Aisha, for having me.
Then we have Ms. Mahnoor Ali Syed. She is a Queen's Young Leader 2018, and she's also a survivor of gender-based violence. And she is an activist, and she advocates on the same cause as well. Thank you for joining us, Mahnoor.
Thank you so much for the introduction and for having me, Aisha.
Next, we have Ms. Maheen Ghani. She is a psychotherapist, humanitarian, and a fashion designer. Maheen has been doing awareness campaign on mental health issues, and she discusses the impact of psychological and emotional abuse, and she herself is also a survivor of long-term trauma. Thank you for joining us, Maheen.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. It's an honor.
And then we have Ms. Raabia Irfan. She is a graduate of NUST and an engineer by profession. Raabia got disability at the age of 6 weeks when she was misdiagnosed, but she continues to defy fear, and she has been just broadening the horizon of what she can achieve. She travels solo, and she's defying all kinds of fear and misconception we have about disability. And today is International Day on persons with disability or differently abled people. So we celebrate heroes like you, Raabia, and it's an absolute honor to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. It's an honor for me to be here. Thank you so much.
And our last speaker is Nisha Rao. She's the first transgender lawyer of Pakistan. She's the president of Pakistan Trans Pride Society. And she's also the member of Law Committee of Sindh Commission on Status of Women. Nisha is on her way, and she will be joining us shortly. I welcome all my speakers. And we will formally begin our discussion. It's going to be 40 minutes of discussion. And then if you have any questions and answers, we can take them at the end of the discussion. So first of all, Mahnoor, I'll start with you.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell us about your journey as a survivor, and then the Queen's Young Leader, and then your activism on gender-based violence, the kind of work you do, and please tell us about it.
Thank you for the platform, Aisha. My work with gender-based violence and gender equality started 4 years ago. And I didn't only work with women, but I also work with gender minorities and the transgender community in Pakistan. And that's how I was networked and linked to the Queens Young Leaders Network and the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Trust. And that's how I was fortunate enough to win the Queens Young Leaders Award back in 2018. But I would say that my journey as an activist started more so in summer 2020, this summer actually, when I started with calling out my own sexual abuser. And it's just started like waves and waves of a social media movement against predators, and also included teachers from institutions all over Lahore. And this movement led to not only like social media callouts, but also legal action against these teachers and students from institutions all over Pakistan. So I realized that a lot of times when we talk about abuse and violence, we often miss out the gender dynamic of it, which is really important because oftentimes there's a clear-cut power play, and the politics of gender are really important. So I think that's how I understood that it's really important to talk about those in discourse, and I tried to create spaces where this can be discussed, and I continue to do so. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to hear from everyone else as well.
Mahnoor, it's an absolute pleasure, but I would also want you to highlight a bit more about your work. How do you help survivors of gender-based violence, and like what is there that your organization can offer to them?
Mhm. So I work with a network of lawyers, journalists, and activists all over Pakistan to help women escape abusive situations. So oftentimes they're usually victims of domestic violence or sexual violence. So our focuses are mainly domestic violence and sexual violence. And we help these women escape these domestic arrangements, and also seek legal aid, and oftentimes call out their abusers on social media if need be. And for that, we collaborate with other organizations like Digital Rights Foundation for a safety toolkit to make sure that everything is done safely. And other than that, I also help young survivors seek therapy, and we provide support groups and other ways of therapy, including art therapy, to make sure that there's a network of support, and then survivors go on to seek any kind of help that they need, legal help or other forms. A major part of my work is advocating for a survivor-centric approach, which basically means that whoever is the survivor of gender-based violence gets to decide how to proceed with their process of justice and healing. So oftentimes a lot of survivors do not really wish to report legally for reasons, but they wish to proceed with healing by focusing more on therapy or personally getting out of that, trauma bonding or that kind of close contact with their abuser. So in that situations, we support them by cutting that kind of contact and getting out of, like, we make sure that they're out of that abusive situation in all means. Oftentimes, a lot of brave women wish to seek legal help. So in those situations, we help them like that with our network of lawyers, and we have a lot of lawyers from Aurat March actually who work with us. So it's basically mainly the main focus is a survivor-centric approach, and however a survivor wishes to proceed with their procedure, we help them with that.
Thank you. Khatija, as you have seen the entire process from police to prosecution to courts to social media campaign and meeting with survivors as an activist, please highlight on the gender-based violence and discrimination which exists at every tier. From your own case, we saw that, it was not approached in a gender sensitized manner. So please just shed some light on the way the system itself needs to be gender sensitized when dealing with cases involving gender-based violence.
Thank you so much, Aisha. It's absolutely an honor to be here with such brave and resilient women on the panel. And I think it's powerful panel, and I'm so glad to be part of it. Okay, so starting from our own system of our prosecution, our police, I think everyone works together, and all these activists, lawyers, all of them have to work together in order to, in order to take us forward to get justice. So in my case, what happened was, I remember when initially I started fighting my case, it was just me and a few lawyers, just a bunch full of lawyers who were not even willing to take my case, and I had to beg them to, take my case forward. But it was because of the pressure, because of the defense counsel's pressure that, you're not supposed to stand against someone who's so influential basically in court. So it was that pressure amalgamated with the toxic mentality that, since you're a girl, why were you attacked in the first place? Or if you were attacked, it must have been your fault. And if it was your fault, you should just back off and, not take the leads and not come to court to demand justice. So, these were the initial societal pressure that we had to face. And my dad, he was approached in court. I remember he was told off by the by my attacker's father to back off, otherwise he'd just give my pictures, my CD to him. And my dad said that, first of all, you commit a crime. Your son attacks my daughter 23 times in broad daylight, and now you have the audacity to tell me that you're going to character malign and character assassinate my daughter. So this was something that actually it hardened our resolve to fight in court, to fight back. But initially I remember it was just about me getting justice. And as soon as the year passed, I was struggling alone. And as soon as I started voicing up and I started taking over social media, and people started writing articles, there were anchors who were talking about my case on media, on mainstream media. So that's where I realized that was not about me. It was never about me. It was the patriarchy that we're actually stuck in. It's the toxic mindset that we were fighting for the whole year. So then it was about the women who started coming forward, who started sharing their similar experiences and how they had to face abuse and how they had to suffer through similar situations, and they could never do something about it because of the similar pressures from the society and from the justice system. And it was just the culmination of I think it was a 3-year long battle. It took me 3 years to actually get my right, to fight for justice, and to finally get the attacker behind bars. So I think the major issue, the major problem initially was the toxic mentality. Even in court, I had to face filthy questions from the defense counsel that, oh, they try to paint me as as a girl of an immoral character. Oh, she deserved to be attacked. Oh, she has pictures with males. Oh, that means she she didn't deserve to live in this world. So this is something that I had to continuously face. But at the same time, by the time the case took to social media and was an uproar, I gained a lot of support from people around me, especially my parents, who had been supporting me throughout. I mean, hats off to them for actually giving me the courage and empowering me to stand before such a humongous force in court. So apart from that, it was the lawyers, it was the activists, I think the team of people who surrounded me when I was standing in court. Initially, I used to stand alone in court with my lawyer, but then as time passed, as my case took to social media, it was it was a huge force behind me of lawyers, of activists, of journalists, who were covering my case, who were taking interest, and who were actually taking the lead. And then I realized that, it was not me, it was them fighting for me, for my cause, for this entire cause of, to get justice. So I think it was a long, long battle, and took a long time, but I think it was worth it. It was a victory for the women of Pakistan to realize that, where there's a will, there's definitely a way. And if you're focused, and if you leave no stone unturned, I think things do make a way, and you do finally find the path towards success.
Thank you very much, Khadija. You've highlighted the main issues around gender-based violence: victim shaming, harassing the victim, and the victims, they start doubting themselves whether I was at fault somewhere. And then the support of people around you. I think that's very important, and it's so brave of your father, especially. In this male-dominated patriarchal environment, I feel the role of men as fathers, brothers, husbands, as our colleagues is very important, because it's an added responsibility on them to take a stand. And you've highlighted all these issues in a very good manner. So after suffering yourself, you did not allowed yourself to feel as a victim. Rather, you're out there helping other women in the same situation. So please tell us how you're working, how your organization is working. We've seen so many cases on social media where you've actively participated. So like what kind of help your organization provides, or if any woman is listening who's suffering from gender-based violence, how she can approach you and what kind of help you can provide.
Okay, so Aisha, since after I completed my law degree, I went to London, I did my bar at law, and then as soon as I came back, I started off with practicing criminal law. I'm doing criminal, I'm doing family law, divorce, custody, all sorts of cases which can actually help women out there. I'm doing them on a pro bono basis for women who cannot afford to pay the legal fees and everything. So, that is something that I'm doing. To help women out there, because I've seen women suffer. I've seen women not take up cases because of lack of finances, because of lack of trust in lawyers. So, I really want to bring that trust back in people, that, where you find the right people, there is hope in the system. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm working for: human rights cases, criminal law, and especially in this field, since lawyers, when they work together, I think we can achieve brilliant results. But the issue is that I feel that we do not bring forth a force which can work together. Everyone's doing their own bit, but we're all doing it separately. So I tell my colleagues and I tell people that if we do it together, if we put in efforts together, we can make a lot of difference. So as of now, since it's just the start of my career, I feel there's a long way to go. But still, I've taken the start, I'm taking the lead, I'm trying my best to help women in court, to help them get justice, because when someone going through a lot, the first thing that the person needs is um, trauma control. Sometimes they need a shoulder to rely on, that okay, this is what I've been through, but someone actually understands what I've been through. So apart from the legal procedures and everything, you need to tell that person that it's okay to have suffered this way, but there's a way out, there's a way to move forward, and there's always a way to wear your scars proudly and as a badge of honor. So that's what I try to do. And obviously everyone who needs help can contact me through my email. My email is on my Instagram. I'm always available on Facebook and on all social media accounts. I'm always active and I keep checking my messages. Whoever contacts me, I immediately respond back. At least I try to immediately respond back to whoever is in need of legal help, or in any way, any psychological therapy. Sometimes I think lawyers also have to be a therapist sometimes with their clients, telling them how to go ahead and how to move forward with their issues and problems. So yes, I think that's about it. I am planning, on um, how to bring in legal reform, because that's also very important in our society. We do have laws. I think this what is lacking is the implementation of the laws, which we're working at. And I hope there is a long way to go, but I still have hope, and I keep telling everyone that we're not giving up. There's always hope at the end of the tunnel. So yes. So do we have Aisha here, or are we supposed to continue the talk?
I think Aisha is not here. Let's continue a little bit. Tell me, Khatija, I think it's so, your bravery is just unparalleled. I can't even imagine the trauma that you probably went through. And it just, me being a psychotherapist, it's something that I deal with as well, right? Like you said, this patriarchal mindset that we have, it's so inbred, even in us women, to just suffer in silence and not speak our truth and, stay stuck in that pain. So just for like viewers and women who are listening, who've suffered either domestic abuse or emotional abuse or sexual abuse, how was your journey to healing? Did you seek therapy? How were you in those initial, that initial time where you had gone through this trauma and you were reeling from that pain, and at the same time fighting this battle in court with this man? So how was your healing journey? How did you take time out to actually invest in yourself, look within, heal, and where are you today with that?
Well, I think, Maheen, initially when everything happened, it happened so quickly that I didn't even get time to, think about it and, to go back. Now, when I go back, I realize that, everything was just happening so quickly that, okay, so we've lost Maheen too. Okay, so yeah,
I'm here.
so,
I'm here. Something happened with my
all
video. I'm here.
all right, okay. So initially, I remember when I used to look at my scars, they were so bright red, and all when I used to look at my neck in the mirror, I used to look at my arms, I used to think, how did this happen all of a sudden? And it used to be so unbelievable. I mean, the trauma when I used to look at my younger sister because she also suffered one attack on her back, on her shoulder. So I kept talking about it all the time, with my parents, and I used to discuss it. And I think the therapy that I received was initial therapy was from my parents, because we used to
Right.
talk about it at home, and how going to the doctors, going for surgery, and it was I think it was slow. It was a slow process, but then again, when my friends and my family, everyone used to come every day to my house, and they used to keep me engaged in different conversations. They used to try to make me forget whatever had happened. But obviously, I think something that you've looked death so closely in the eye, I think it's completely impossible to forget it, or to not think about it. But yes, it was a healing is, I think it's a gradual process, and I think I'm still in that phase. And I think um, healing, I think it never ends. I think you would just keep healing over time, and
Yeah.
there are
And I
different.
also want to say over here that with all the victim shaming that happens and the trauma, um, therapy is self-care, and there should be no shame in that. There's so much stigma attached to mental health that it's important when you go through trauma to take time out on yourself to heal, to seek therapy and actually have medical professional help, because there's so much that we carry with us that it's important to actually heal from that trauma. Traumas don't just go away. We have to just heal. I think Aisha is
Absolutely.
back, so let's hand it over to her.
I'm so sorry, guys. Internet is a serious, serious issue in my village. I'm here in my village, and internet is always a problem. Aisha, Maheen, coming to you. I've followed your videos. Many women follow your videos, and you've touched upon the topic which is not talked about. It's emotional abuse and mental abuse. It's often unnoticed and unreported because even if girls, if they are in an emotionally abusive marriages, their own families don't understand. They're going to say, oh, well, you are provided for financially, he doesn't beat you up. And what is this emotional trauma? Because you can't show it to anyone. So please tell us that how women, and you see, when you are in that situation, there is a constant struggle of whether you need to stay in this marriage. And there's so much of gaslighting and manipulation and narcissism, the concepts which you have talked about. And many women probably didn't even realize that these things exist and how they've been manipulated upon. So please tell us about how to identify emotional and mental abuse, and what should women do who are in such sort of settings and relationships.
Sure. Thank you so much, Aisha. Absolutely. I went through it myself, and being a psychotherapist, it made me realize how much there's lack of awareness in societies like ours, and that's why I decided that I need to create awareness on these topics. Sexual assault, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse, all of them are very black and white. So when they're happening to us, we know if somebody's abusing us or hitting us, or there's a sexual assault, we know it's happening to us. The problem with emotional abuse is that there's so much gray area. We have no awareness on it. We've never learned about it. We've never been told about it. So there's such a gray area with what is emotional abuse. So the first step for women, which is what I'm trying to do, is create awareness on what emotional abuse is, the variations of emotional abuse, what kind it can be. It can be passive aggressive comments, it can be gaslighting, it can be stonewalling where somebody just ignores you, it can be isolation. There's so much to emotional abuse. It can be manipulation, it can be intermittent love where one day they're good to you, one day they're not. There's such a variation, like I said, a broad spectrum of emotional abuse that we don't know about. We've never been told about it. And like you said, in these patriarchal mindsets that we live in, women are always told, you know what, suffer in silence, sabr karo, there's bravery in that. Actually, there's bravery in speaking your truth. There's bravery in talking about the abuse that's happened and being able to heal from it. And we're not allowed that space. And for years, women just suffer. Either they're told, this is how men are, you should stay silent and be that obedient wife. Or we're told, if you're getting abused in a marriage, it's not so bad. As long as he hasn't hit you, stay in the marriage for children. And I can't tell you the devastating effects that can have on children. We think that we're saving them, but we're actually damaging them, because the childhood wounds that happen to us stay with us throughout adulthood. And that's why actually recognizing and gaining awareness on emotional abuse is the most important thing. And the amount of women that go through that, whether it's being with a partner that has narcissistic personality disorder, again, something that is not talked about, whether it's in-laws, whether it's family members that are, like I said, in a passive aggressive way, even abusing you. Unless you don't learn about it, unless you don't create awareness on emotional abuse, women will not know that it's happening to them. I have so many clients that stay for years in self-blame and wondering, what have I done wrong? And these people who just chip into their soul and take away their self-worth, until one day they realize there's so much resentment and anger, and then they realize that it was never my fault. Someone else's insecurities, demons were projected on me, and I was just told to suffer in silence. And it's such a tragedy. That's why I think awareness is such a crucial thing for mental health. Mental health matters. If we look after ourselves physically, we have to be able to look after ourselves and our mental health as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So we have Aisha here. Okay, so Maheen, taking on from here, can you share what exactly are you doing nowadays, and how do you deal with clients? How do you manage your time, and what exactly are you doing? Do you work from home, or do you have a clinic where you act as a
Yes.
psychotherapist?
So I work from home, and I take on clients, and I also have my mental health page where I make multiple videos talking about mental health, talking about emotional abuse, talking about relationships. And it has been so encouraging, because the influx of women, even men that reach out to me that have suffered either at the hands of toxic men or narcissists, it has given me so much strength and courage, and also made me realize that we don't have platforms that speak about those things. We don't have platforms which can encourage women to understand, to take a stand for themselves, to protect themselves, to show up for themselves. And that is essentially what I'm trying to do through therapy, through my mental health awareness page, is to reach out to as many people as I can, so that they understand that they're not alone. So women like us can be brave enough to speak our truth, to speak about our experiences, and make them also understand that you are not alone in this, and you're not alone in this fight.
Absolutely. I think it's so important to realize what emotional abuse, psychological abuse, and trauma is, because mostly women, they're not even aware that they're going through it, and they're actually okay with it. They're like, maybe it's meant to be like that. So, how do you tell female survivors that, this is how narcissists are, and this is how you need to protect yourself? How do you go about it? Just give us like a glimpse of it.
Um,
Psychotherapy.
So I've spoken about narcissistic personality disorder a lot, and I feel like so many people suffer from it. And what happens in that is there's a lot of manipulation, isolation, gaslighting, and narcissists typically are people with no empathy. So what they do is, over time, whether it's a partner or a family member, they chip into slowly into your soul, and they take away your self-worth. And what happens to the victim is they spend years just blaming themselves, walking around eggshells, trying to please a narcissist, not understanding what's happening to them. And what they're actually going through is narcissistic abuse. And so many women I know have suffered at the hands of narcissists. And it's so hard to also leave those relationships, because, like I think Mahnoor also mentioned, sometimes you get trauma bonded to your abusers. And it's so hard to understand what a trauma bond is and to be able to break that cycle of abuse.
And Maheen, at the same time, I think there's this stigma attached to women not approaching psychotherapists, not approaching psychiatrists, because there's this stigma that if you approach someone for mental health or for your mental health and health well-being, you're probably being tagged as, oh, she's probably mental, or she's sick, or she needs help, maybe she's lost everything. So how do you actually deal with that?
It's so unfortunate, that even in this day and age, people have to hide and
I
come
have
for
said
therapy.
that
Sorry, go ahead, Aisha.
I'm sorry about the internet issues. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. We are short of time. We were having an amazing conversation on mental health, and it's very important. I have a quick question from Mahnoor.
I think we lost Aisha.
Yeah, I think
It's
we
more of
lost her
social justice
again.
as opposed to justice.
She's there now.
So
Do we have
can,
Aisha?
Again.
can somebody else ask the question probably?
Yeah.
Can you
Okay,
hear me?
by the way, before I actually move to Mahnoor, can I just
So-
ask a question to Maheen? Back to her, if that's okay.
Do we have Aisha?
Yeah, there we go. Maheen, how exactly do you guide people
guys can
about
carry
fighting
on.
with the
Maheen.
fight? Okay. Over to you, Aisha. Take it.
Give Mahnoor time, please. Can you please ask this question from Mahnoor? Mahnoor, it's more about social justice as opposed to legal justice. And the same happened with the Me Too movement. As many people say that even if these people are not convicted by the courts of law, it really undermines the credibility of the Me Too movement. And we've seen that there is issue with the sexual harassment law. There needs to be an employer-employee relationship. In so many cases, they've not given outcomes in the legal arena. So what have you got?
Okay, so I think that I'll start by saying that justice is a very multifaceted process, and we need to look at it as such. And I also feel like it's very important to understand that gender-based violence, sexual abuse, they're all more of a social problem than being a legal problem alone. So it all comes under the umbrella of being, social problems. And I think that just saying that why, asking questions like why did she not approach the court straight away, or why did she not get him convicted first? I think these questions, we all are asked such questions, and these questions themselves kind of restrict the kind of avenues a survivor can, take when when they're taking the path of justice. So I think that a lot of times the conversation starts on avenues like social media as the world is becoming digitalized and globalized. And it's also important to understand that a lot of times these abusers hold a lot of power with like social capital, and they enjoy a lot of popularity on social media, mainstream media. So I think a social media call out or creating awareness on social media is kind of like a first step in starting the discourse. For example, when I called out my own sexual abuser in summer 2020, we started off by calling him out on social media. So before calling him out, I had tried approaching the university that he studies in for any kind of legal proceedings or any kind of academic proceedings, or this kind of taking support in terms of resources and how I should proceed. And unfortunately, I received a very disappointing response. So that kind of reflected, like it reminded me how a lot of structures and institutions that are available for justice are sometimes skewed against women, gender minorities, international students, and ethnic minorities in different countries. So in those respects, sometimes the only avenue that is left is social justice, and making sure that we get the conversation started about a certain predator, that this is what they're like. Maheen mentioned, a lot of times these predators have very narcissistic and problematic behavior patterns. So a lot of times it's about getting the conversation started. So when we called him out on social media, a lot of girls who had had similar experiences with the same person started sharing their experiences themselves. So on media like social media, it generally has a butterfly effect. With one person speaking out, another person finds a safe space, or kind of finds a kind of relatability to speak out and share their experiences as well. So then we formed a network of survivors, and now we have a community with survivors who've had experiences with the same person. And then a lot of us, since we got together, we could combine evidence, we could share our experiences, we could relate to each other. So we combined our evidence, and then a lot of us reported it to the police together. So it's all about seeing justice as a multifaceted process, which should be survivor friendly and survivor centric. And the survivor should get to decide how to proceed with it. And eventually, I think, since I mentioned that it does have a butterfly effect, eventually, like, it does go to court sometimes. And now the predator has been expelled from university and their degrees on hold because of the social media momentum. So a lot of times, actual, like, tangible justice, starts with social media or starts with getting that conversation started. I hope that answers the question.
So I'll now move to
Yes.
Raabia. Raabia, you tell us about what kind of discrimination women with disability face, and how you manage to overcome those fears, and what is more that needs to be.
Okay. Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd actually like to thank PUAN for inviting me to share my experience on such a prestigious platform and share it with all these fabulous women who are actually making a difference. Along with that, and congratulations to everybody on celebrating the 2020 Differently Abled Day. I'm here to probably represent all of them. To answer your question, or probably to actually connect it to my stories directly, I agree that the gender-based violence and the discrimination is affecting our social lives and moral values. I'm basically a career-oriented woman who actually has been working for the past around 14 years now. And working in a safe and gender discrimination-free environment happens to be my right. There are several factors that have actually contributed towards my success. The primary one of them being self-love, okay? And I'll actually, just because I come from a project manager's background, I would actually love to reiterate it multiple times that the most important project that anybody can work on is themselves, okay? You need to focus on yourself first. You cannot pour from an empty glass. So you need to actually make sure that you are working on your own things. Talking about my background or my story in short, like due to an unfortunate incident, I was left weak in the legs at an early age of 6 weeks. I was too young to get up and take care of myself. So my parents actually stepped in at that point, and they became my strength at every stage of my life. My mother looked after all of my physical shortcomings, and my father, who is my best friend as well, made me realize that my strength is not in my legs, but in my head. I have to actually dream high to actually achieve high. So if you can actually dream it, you can actually achieve it. I'll be very honest with you. For me, these are not quotations. These are actually life experiences. The family behind me was always a motivation. They kept me going. My teachers, my friends, my colleagues, all of them were my backbone. They kept me going. They kept me moving. I did my bachelor's from Military College of Signals NUST as a software engineer. And after that, I started working in the industry. And now I'm actually holding 5 multiple positions in a single company. Like, I'm a project manager, I'm an agile coach, I'm a scrum master, I'm a delivery operations lead, alongside an executive program manager with Teradata Global. There are multiple factors to which I actually attribute my success to. The primary one being grit, definitely willingness to work hard and the willingness to make a difference, and the courage to go against all odds. Believe me, everyone, the willingness is actually the main item, main ingredient. It actually helps you move. Just the way everybody here was actually talking about, like even Khatija or Maheen, they actually mentioned these things quite frequently, that the willingness to step up for your own self is actually going to keep you moving. I knew that the life was not actually about finding myself. It was actually by creating myself from the very beginning. So Alhamdulillah, I did that. My teachers actually made sure that I was actually ready to drive through these hard seas and stuff so that I can actually become a really good sailor. So courage and confidence got me going, and it kept me moving from one place to another. Another really important factor was actually the positive attitude. just to make sure that you are actually avoiding all of these negative thoughts and replacing them with the positive attitude so that you can actually see the positive results. It actually all comes from here. And probably Maheen will be actually iterating more on this specific part. Another important thing that I actually feel that was a secret to my success was enthusiasm and hard work. Okay. Believe me, like hard work without luck is actually nothing. You need to keep on working on yourself. You need to keep on moving forward. And no matter how many times do you fall, you need to get up, dust yourself up, and then keep moving. Believe me, it works. It works. We actually need to actually look at a lot of other things from different perspectives. Sometimes we need to actually see what is the positivity that we can inculcate in somebody else. We need to see a positive image of ourselves. Every new thing that happens around you, all of a sudden, don't get into a state of, wow, why is this thing happening? Why is such a thing happening to me? Just go with, oh, wow, let's do it. Let's do this thing. There is no problem in that. We need to actually have a positive self-image. We need to actually remove that T so that we can actually do these things. We have to make a focus on our own self-confidence. Just the way Aisha actually mentioned earlier on that I'm actually a solo traveler because earlier on my father actually inculcated it in me that the life is actually just like a book. And if you're not traveling, you're just reading the same page over and over again. And hence I decided to travel. My first travel was to Saudi Arabia in 2012. And that's me on the wheelchair. And my mom is actually driving me through Safa and Marwa. And I actually prayed to Allah at that time that I really want to be strong enough to go around and do all of these things without anybody else's support. And here it goes. In 2016, I actually performed the Hajj or the pilgrimage with my parents. And it was in 2016. And this time I was actually walking on the crutches. And there the story started. I actually traveled to Prague in 2017, and it was my first solo travel alone. It was a conference that I had to attend to in Prague. And I kept on exploring the entire city on and off metros and trains and Uber and everything. But it was such a beautiful feeling, a confidence that I realized that I would have never had that if my parents would have kept me protected in this way rather than this way. My parents made sure that I grow. Later on my way back from Prague, I actually went to Turkey. It was a transit trip. So I was like, there is no harm in actually having a bonus trip on the way back. So that was actually one. In 2019, I actually traveled to Philippines, which was actually accompanied by another trip to Thailand from my office's side. This actually opened the door of all of these travelings in 2020, despite this pandemic. I was actually really lucky that just before this pandemic and lockdown started, I actually traveled to Abu Dhabi and Australia to visit my sister. And it was a wonderful experience. Later on, I actually traveled to Turkey this around in October 2020, which was a wonderful experience. And I went around and it was a layered trip. Nobody in the trip actually felt that, oh, they were being left behind because of me. I went around in the balloon. And eventually, I actually saw my dream coming true by flying in the sky. So from all these different things, like traveling from wheelchair to crutches, till eventually the paragliding, I'll be really honest with you, from all of these different trips, experience, confidence, and happiness were the take homes that I always had. I would just like to say that the logic will take you from A to Z, and despite whatever limitations this world is throwing at you, write your own story with your own hands. You are the best author. Live your own life with confidence and never be apologetic of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we've lost Aisha again. So yeah, and while we're on this topic, and I would like everybody to kind of join in and say what they feel, but I feel since we are talking about gender-based violence, I think one of the main things that we all feel, and we've all felt at some point, is the victimization that happens with women. And how do we deal with that? How do we change that mindset? I think Khatija spoke about that also, of it's this patriarchal mindset that has to change, and whether we do that through changes in our infrastructures, in our institutes, in our ground root level changes, something has to happen. Because even in this day and age, whether it's like a rape victim, or it's assault, or it's domestic violence, or emotional abuse, it's all about victimization. And that has to change more than anything, because women suffer at the hands of men that feel entitled, that feel they can treat women as objects. And we are told to, like I said, silence ourselves and everything that we go through. So Khadija, Mahnoor, Raabia, would you like to add something on that, on how collectively women have to support each other so we can create awareness on what we go through, how the victimization has to stop, how we have to show compassion and sensitivity towards each other for this mindset to change?
I think that is a very important point, Maheen. I think a lot of abuse, be it sexual, physical, domestic, or verbal, it stems out of that kind of entitlement. Because it's basically, feeling entitled over other people's boundaries, feeling entitled over their bodies, feeling entitled over their spaces. A lot of it stems from that. And since there's a clear-cut gender dynamic and male entitlement comes into play, and often male entitlement also translates into when like a woman calls out a man for harassing her or for making her feel uncomfortable, the reaction is mostly gaslighting. This is no hidden secret. So I think
And
even that stems out of entitlement and thinking that they're entitled to do so. And then oftentimes in that kind of interpersonal abusive relationship, women start feeling either gaslit or victimized. And in certain situations, since the predator creates a certain kind of power dynamic where the woman starts feeling dependent on him, and then there's a there are processes like trauma bonding. So the woman feels that she can't really live without that kind of relationship, and then it's very difficult to escape that relationship due to logistical reasons, due to emotional reasons, due to trauma bonding, due to like victimizing yourself, gaslighting yourself over time, because of that kind of patriarchal mindset gets into you. So I think that's exactly how to tackle that, and how to get women out of that is to create spaces where women support each other. And because I think there's a lot of comfort in relatability, and there's a lot of comfort in another woman understanding what you've been through, and talking to a woman who's escaped a situation that you're going through right now. I would like to again share the example of how we dealt with our situation in summer. So initially, when I called the abuser out, it was just me and my friend Maria's experience that we shared. And then a lot of women who had experiences with the same abuser kind of came out, and we created a community. And then through that community, we kind of related and shared our experiences. And a lot of women who were scared of talking about that and felt that they could never relate or be understood, because a lot of times we question ourselves and we negate our own experiences, we invalidate them because we never feel heard or understood. So a lot of the journey of healing and justice starts from feeling understood and validated. So I think in that process, women coming together and forming those kind of spaces and support groups and communities is detrimental.
Yes, absolutely. Finding that safety within each other. And concluding words, Khadija, would you like to say something? Would you like to add something to that?
Yes, I would add on. I feel women, as you just mentioned, I think we should empower each other. We should amplify each other's voices, because there's one thing which everyone needs to understand, that dignity, respect, and acceptance are basic human rights, and we don't apply to receive them. We don't fill out a form to actually receive them. So we everyone gets them by default. So I feel that women, we are not the custodians of the family's honor, the family's इज्जत के लोग क्या कहेंगे, इस चीज को, इस taboo से हमने ना इसको निकालने की सीधा, because everything is attached to, I remember even during my case, oh, your family's honor is at stake. I mean, I am not carrying the family's honor in my body. Women are not the custodians of the family honor. So I think this thing really needs to be struck off out of our brains, that you're not supposed to blame yourself for things, the wrong things that happen to you. Basically, don't blame yourself, and just empower each other, and shoulder each other, so that's what will build you, and that's what will build stronger women, and they'll help you reach out. So
Yes, because in a society like ours, it's hard enough coming out with something that has happened to you and a trauma, and we have to stand together. We have to believe the survivors. I'm not going to call them victims. We have to believe the survivors. We have to support them. There's so much victim shaming that happens. There's so much trauma that happens. We already feel unsafe. We, like she said, we're made to feel like they're entitled to our bodies. Our bodies are our own, our life is our own, our traumas are real. We have to believe our survivors when they come forward. We have to support them. We have to create a community which supports women and women's rights, because without that, we have nothing. And we have to have a safer world for our future generations so that our daughters and our sisters don't have to fight this hard. I think we lost Aisha, but I think we can conclude now. Thank you so much for all these wonderful, strong, resilient women. It's women like us that can change our future. And we're strong and we're true to ourselves and our story and our narrative. And I think together we can do so much good in this world. And inshallah, we will. Thank you so much, everyone.
Inshallah, we will. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you,
All the best.
everyone.
Take care, everyone.